What happens when the person you love and trust the most starts to turn into someone or something you don't even recognize?
Are you awake?
You Are Not My Mother, directed by Kate Dolan, tells the story of a lonely teenage girl named Shah, who is terrified of her mother after she goes missing and returns with no explanation. Her behaviour grows increasingly erratic and frightening, almost as if she is possessed. Shah struggles between not feeling like she belongs anywhere, at school or at home, being bullied, and trying to uncover her family's dark secrets in order to discover the truth about her mother's brief disappearance and the reason behind her terrifying, volatile behaviour. In a haunting opening flashback, we see a baby alone and crying in its stroller in the middle of a dark, empty street. The wide shot further emphasizes the neglect and isolation of this child. Eventually, we see two women arguing in the distance, and one of them scurries away and pushes the stroller into the woods. The woman, who we come to know as Rita, the child's grandmother, performs a mysterious ritual. She follows instructions from a book, ignoring the baby's mother, Angela's, protests, tracing a circle around the child laid in the dirt and surrounding her with a ring of fire. The grandmother watches as the baby wails, the heat flickering too close, resulting in a small burn to her cheek, which her family later tells her is a birthmark. The reasoning behind this ritual remains unanswered until almost the very end of the movie. It's immediately apparent that Shah's home life is not particularly pleasant. In the present day, we see Shah struggling to cope with their dysfunctional home life. Her uncle Aaron lives nearby and visits from time to time, but the house is a dreary, unsettling place with its narrow hallways, dusty old furniture, discoloured yellow walls, the film's overall muted colour palette, and the string-bound twigs that her sickly grandmother made for protection. Shah's mother is despondent and virtually bedbound due to a crippling depression and hopelessness that prevents her from taking care of herself, let alone her daughter. Shah's fear doesn't come from dramatic outbursts or obvious horror yet, but it's in the small, heartbreaking details. The way she hesitates outside Angela's room as if proximity alone might invite danger. The way she summons all her courage just to ask her mother for a ride to school. We see the quiet terror of a child who no longer knows what to expect from the person she loves the most. School offers no real escape. Shah's meekness and gifted academic abilities set her apart at her all-girls Catholic high school, making her a target for persistent bullying from her peers. It becomes very clear how the misery and fragility of her family life make her feel just as stuck and alone as she does. Shah is relentlessly bullied by classmates, and a sympathetic teacher does try to reach out, but the emotional toll of home and school life is already pressing too heavily on her shoulders. One morning, around a week before Halloween, Shah's mother disappears, seemingly vanishing into thin air. Even though Shah is a teenager, she takes responsibility for the home. She begs her mother to get out of bed and give her a ride to school when she misses the bus, and she chastises her for not having food in the house. Shah has to quickly steer them off the road when it seems as if her mother is stuck in a trance, coming dangerously close to hitting a horse. In moments like this, it's clear how deeply parentified Shah has become. She might still be a kid, but she's the one holding the household together. Shah isn't just worrying about getting to school, she's worrying about groceries, about meals, about making sure her mother doesn't harm herself or anyone else. And it doesn't stop there. With her grandmother old, sickly and frail, Shah ends up filling the caretaker role for her too, quietly absorbing responsibilities no teenager should have to shoulder. It's heartbreaking because you can see how much she is trying. She skipped ahead a year at school, probably throwing herself into her studies as the one part of her life she can control, but no amount of academic success can protect her from the chaos at home. When she grabs that steering wheel to stop the car, it's not just about avoiding the horse, it's a literal moment where she is forced to take control because the adults around her won't or can't. And that's what Shah's entire world looks like, a teenager trying to survive the collapse of her family while no one else seems to see how bad it really is. Angela sends her daughter off to school with a cryptic message: "I don't think I can do this anymore." Soon after, she disappears. It's such a simple but chilling image. Angela's car sitting alone in a field, the driver's side door left wide open like she just vanished into thin air. No sign of a struggle, no note, no goodbye. It's eerie in a quiet, ordinary way, and that makes it even worse. This is what a parent's mental illness can feel like to a child. One day your parent is there, distant maybe, but present, and the next they're emotionally or even physically gone, unreachable, like they've just slipped through a crack in the world. And for Shah, this moment feels like a cruel confirmation of something she'd probably feared for a long time, that her mother might never come back, or that the version who returns won't be the same. The family reports the disappearance to the police, but after a half-hearted search they are unable to provide much assistance. This only reinforces the idea that Shah is on her own. No one is coming to help, no one's taking this seriously, and in the absence of answers, she's left to fill in the blanks herself. Shah anxiously awaits her return, and when she does reappear the mystery only deepens. When Shah and Aaron sort through Angela's medication and notice the lithium is missing, it quietly reveals a crucial clue, hinting at a deeper, long-standing struggle with bipolar disorder, and casting her erratic mood swings in a far more tragic human light. After a few days, she seems to have undergone a baffling transformation, exuding an unsettling brightness and optimism. Her newfound engagement with the family and cheerful, warm facade conceal a sinister change that alarms those around her. Her depression seems to have lifted, and she is cheerfully dressing up in a brightly coloured dress and cooking dinner for the family and dancing in the kitchen. This, in my opinion, is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the film, because it's so familiar to anyone who's watched a loved one struggle with mood swings. Shah is unnerved at first. She can sense that something about this cheerfulness feels forced, a little too bright, like a mask stretched over something darker. But at the same time, she clings to it and embraces the positive changes. Because when you're a kid in that situation, every good moment gives you hope. Maybe this time things really are better. Maybe this time your parent is back and the nightmare is over. You can feel Shah's desperate need to believe in that possibility, even as the cracks start to show. It's such a raw, honest portrayal of how confusing and painful it is to live with someone battling mental illness, how every high raises your hopes, only to leave you bracing for the fall. But her grandmother Rita, ever watchful and armed with protective charms, seems suspicious of these changes in Angela, and attempts to disrupt the newfound household harmony, deliberately knocking over the soup Angela had made. And just like that, Angela's mood flips, and she sits at the table staring gloomily at her mother. They continue to eat their chips with a glass of milk, which makes me physically ill to think about, but that's besides the point. Angela tries to suggest that she and her daughter should just get in the car and drive anywhere for Shah's birthday, that it would be a fun adventure.
I think we should go away. Just the two of us.
I think you should take it easy at the moment.
And her brother Aaron might be the only person in Shah's world who's genuinely trying to help, checking on Angela, reminding her to take her medication, just trying to be practical. He gently suggests that what she really needs is rest, stability, and routine, just as the doctor said, not some big road trip that risks shaking up what little balance they have. But that's where things shift. You can see Angela's resentment building from that moment on, like she's nursing a grudge against the one person trying to intervene and keep her grounded. It's as if Aaron represents everything she doesn't want to hear, that she's unwell, that she needs help, that she should slow down. As days pass, Shah's mother's altered personality becomes more evident, and her erratic behaviour becomes more unsettling. One night, Shah watched as Angela stood hunched over in the bathroom, convulsing in inhuman ways, and reached far down her throat with pretty much her whole arm until she heaved and vomited in the toilet, presumably to rid herself of her medication. Shah watches in horror and then runs back to bed to pretend to be asleep as Angela comes up behind her, whispering, asking if she's awake.
Are you awake? Are you awake?
That moment of Shah running back to bed and pretending to be asleep says so much about what it feels like to be a kid in the middle of something terrifying. It's that instinct we all remember from childhood. If I close my eyes, if I hide under the covers, maybe the scary thing will just go away. Maybe if I don't move, don't speak, I can make it disappear. But the heartbreaking part is that the monster Shah is hiding from isn't under her bed or in her closet, it's her own mother. Angela, in that moment, has become something so unfamiliar, so frightening, harming herself and acting in ways that don't make sense to Shah, that Shah's only option is to hide. It's a reminder that beneath all that forced maturity, beneath the responsibilities that she's had to shoulder, Shah is still just a child. Scared, vulnerable, and desperate for the person she loves to come back to herself. Angela's unpredictable shifts in mood, frightening demeanour, strange inhuman actions, and Shah's traumatic memories of years of neglect leave the young girl in a state of unease, tiptoeing around the house and keeping her distance. The more Angela leans into impulsive, erratic behaviour, the harder it becomes to ignore the unsettling truth. She may not be the same woman at all. Shah's anxieties grow as she continues to be tormented by bullies and continues to observe Angela's increasingly strange behaviour. The situation escalates tenfold when Shah's Uncle Aaron falls victim to poisoning at Angela's hands, when she crushed her pills into a cup of tea, leading to his hospitalisation. It feels less like a random act and more like she's deliberately removing the one voice of reason, punishing him for trying to make things better. There's something painfully real in that too. Sometimes when someone's lost in their own illness or struggles, they lash out at the people who care the most, because accepting help means facing truths they're not ready for. And for Shah, watching this unfold must be terrifying, because the one adult who seemed steady and safe is suddenly taken out of the picture, leaving her more alone than ever. Angela veers wildly from tenderness to fury, from vulnerable to threatening, from bursts of manic energy to moments of terrifying stillness. Later that night, Angela ignores Shah's worries over her uncle and instead begins to dance.
Dance with me, Shah. No, man, stop.
What begins as light-hearted suddenly morphs into something predatory, quickly becoming more violent and erratic as she throws herself around and screams as Shah begs her to stop. She hurts her ankle and only laughs before letting out more guttural, chilling shrieks as her daughter cowers in fear against the wall. Shah runs away and shuts herself into her room as Angela crawls after her. This sudden shift taps into deep fears many children have when a parent's mental health feels out of control, that the person they love has become a stranger, unpredictable and frightening. This film externalizes the inner demons that families wrestle with, anxiety, severe untreated mental illness, trauma, and brings them to life as something monstrous. Angela's terrifying transformations can easily be read as the personification of her struggles with mental illness, as seen through Shah's terrified and confused eyes. Shah forms an unlikely bond with Suzanne, a girl who once bullied her but now offers unexpected kindness. As Shah opens up about her mother's frightening transformation, Suzanne responds with empathy, sharing her own painful experience of losing her mother. The connection becomes a rare source of comfort for Shah amid the chaos of her life. Suzanne even says,
"Family is the scariest fucking thing on the planet."
Shah invites Suzanne over for dinner one night, and her grandmother responds with hostility and tells her to go home. When Suzanne is in their kitchen, she is frightened when a ghostly woman grabs her shoulder from behind and whispers in her ear, telling her to leave, and she subsequently runs out of the house in fear. After this, Shah discovers that her entire life has been built on fabrications and half-truths, leading to the realization that everyone has been keeping something from her. Her grandmother unveils the dark truth of their past. When Shah was a baby, her grandmother realized she had been swapped with a changeling. According to Wikipedia, a changeling is a substitute left by a supernatural being after kidnapping a human being. Essentially, it's a swap, putting something unnatural in a place of something that was once natural.
Y'all ugly!
Rita explains that this swap was rectified by the fiery ritual we witnessed at the start. Finally, we are starting to receive some answers. She insists that the ones that took her as a child are vengeful creatures and have come back for her, and that her mother Angela is not really her mother but also a changeling, and that the ritual must be repeated to get the real Angela back.
Don't be scared now. It might not look like your mother anymore. She's started to change. We need to weaken her. Bring her to a fire. See if she turns.
The film walks a delicate line between stark realism and eerie supernatural dread, leaving us, like Shah, unsure what's truly happening. Is this a story of dark folklore, of vengeful spirits reclaiming what was once theirs, or is it much more human, a frightening reality of a family collapsing under the weight of mental illness? Despite initially believing her grandmother and agreeing to help, when Shah sees Angela bound, gagged, tied to a bed and locked in her room, she is shocked, and her compassion for what appears to be her mother triumphs. Despite her grandmother's protests, Shah frees Angela. However, she realizes all too late that her grandmother was right all along when she sees a smiling, distorted image of her mother in her reflection. A confrontation between Rita and Angela's doppelganger ensues, which tragically leads to Rita's demise. After which, Shah envisions her grandmother telling her to, quote, burn it. The next morning, Shah comes downstairs to her grandmother's body sitting in her chair, unmoving and not breathing. She runs out of the house as Angela bellows out her name. Back in the Delaney house, we see Angela's physical transformation beginning, her hair falling out and her skin mottled. When Halloween arrives, a night steeped in myth and folklore originating from the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, Shah, realizing that she is the only one who can save her mother, musters up the bravery to confront the otherworldly forces that have infiltrated her family, even if that means potentially losing her forever.
Hey! Are you looking for me?
She eventually ends up cowering before the school bullies again, who force her inside an unlit bonfire and threaten to set her on fire. However, the bullies are scared off by the approach of the changeling Angela. She pushes her way into the bonfire to reach Shah, and she taunts her, telling her that she is alone in the world and she has no friends or family except for her, and that she can come with her to a place where there is no pain or sadness. There's something so chilling and heartbreaking in this moment. It's like watching someone who's consumed by their own suffering try to take the people they love down with them, and in that instant you see how easy it would be for Shah to give in. She folds into the creature's arms in an embrace, not because she's fooled, but because she just wants for 1 second to feel like she's not so alone. She wants to believe that this creature is really her mother, and that the comfort she's so desperate for and deprived of is real, even though deep down she knows it isn't. And that's what's so powerful about this scene. It mirrors what can happen when a child grows up in a household where mental illness is prevalent and untreated. There's a pull, a learned pattern, where you start to believe that if you can't escape the darkness, maybe the only choice is to surrender to it. The changeling offering that escape is like the voice of unhealthy coping mechanisms, promising peace if you just stop fighting. And when Shah eventually ignites the bonfire, recognizing that it is indeed not her mother, it isn't just about destroying the creature, it's her moment of breaking that hold, of refusing to follow the same destructive path that's trapped her family for so long. As the fire consumes the changeling's form, Suzanne pulls Shah to safety, and in the aftermath, Angela's true self finally emerges from the ashes. In the final scene, Shah crafts a symbolic token from twigs to ensure her mother's safety, as her grandmother had once made for her. Angela and Shah's relationship is reunited and restored, and they emerge from the ordeal as mother and daughter, ready to face a future unburdened by the haunting shadows of their past that once defined their lives. At its core, You Are Not My Mother is a deeply atmospheric story about fractured family ties, the weight of generational trauma, and the strength it takes to face what we fear most, both supernatural and deeply human. And of course, we have to wonder, did any of the supernatural things really happen at all? At the start of the film, was Rita truly saving her granddaughter from a changeling? Or was that terrifying image, a woman setting fire around her infant granddaughter, actually the first sign of something far more human and tragic? A matrilineal legacy of paranoia, fear, and untreated mental illness. Maybe she was acting out of her own delusions, convinced she had to destroy something that wasn't actually real. Maybe what really destroyed the Delaney family wasn't a changeling or vengeful spirits, but superstition passed down through generations, turning love into something twisted and dangerous. The concept of the changeling works perfectly as a metaphor for how untreated mental illness can warp family bonds. Rita believed that Shah wasn't really herself as a baby, and now she's convinced the same about Angela, that she needs to be burned to bring the real Angela back. But what if this is just the same destructive pattern repeating? What if Rita's superstitious nature is really about trying to make sense of her family's pain in the only way she knows how, relying on mythological stories because facing the truth was too hard? When Shah sets the changeling on fire, it's framed as this big act of bravery, but is it? Sure, Angela returns in the aftermath, but how do we know she's really Angela? What if Shah just imagined it all? What if Shah has just inherited the same need to believe the fire fixed things, the same way Rita did? It's heartbreaking to think that maybe Shah hasn't broken the cycle at all. Maybe she's stepped right into it. We see Angela come back at the end, but does she? Or is that just what Shah needs to believe? After everything she's been through, it's possible the real Angela is just as much a story Shah tells herself as the changeling ever was. The final image of Shah reading her grandmother's books and crafting her own protective charm out of twigs, like Rita used to, is such a perfect gut punch. It's sweet, but also unsettling. She's now turning to the same rituals, the same beliefs, maybe because it's the only way she knows how to feel safe. It's a callback to that moment after Suzanne ran from their house and Shah cried to Rita that maybe everyone at school was right. Maybe this family really is cursed by its own madness.
You know what they'll say in school? That this family are fucking crazy. And they're right.
It makes you wonder, has she broken free from this cycle of fear, or is she now caught up in it too? Maybe she's inherited the same need to find some kind of magic solution for the things she can't control. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments how you interpreted this film, which is available to watch on Prime Video and Shudder, or at least in the UK it is anyway. Yeah, bye bye.